So we're talking about HRM's role cultivating a positive security culture in your organization. For those of you here, if you're working in this, you know that this is very, very critical. There was an incident that I had to report, and it was a former best friend of mine, actually. She did some really, really bad things when I was with another organization. She broke a lot of laws. She ethically did a lot of just really terrible things. And I was really, really torn in what do I do? You know, like here I want to be loyal to my friend, but the things she did were straight up bad. So I felt like I needed to report her, but that organization, there was no confidential reporting and retaliation was rampant. And there was just no way to do it without harming my career. And to be frank, it was actually something that contributed to my leaving that organization. I did report her, and I've unfortunately never spoken to her again. But the reason that I share that story is that the culture and all of those nuances surrounding culture, like confidential reporting, all impacts employees and their engagement and their, if they're leaving or not. Now, you can see on the slide here, Forrester actually predicted that 90% of data breaches will include the human element in 2024. As we all know, human risk, which is what I eat, sleep, and breathe, I love this so much. Human risk encompasses loss to an organization caused by human factors, including decisions and non-decisions, right? Actions and non-actions of its people. Loss includes both financial and non-financial loss. And human risk can be caused by how an organization manages its people or doesn't manage its people and what it demands from them. So HRM is really a holistic approach to security that focuses on identifying, quantifying, actively managing, and ultimately reducing your human risk, which is why we are all here. All right, let's see, next slide. See, my computer cooperates. All right. So you've all been there before, right? You know how important company culture is because you've most likely experienced a bad or toxic one. If we were in person, I would ask you to raise your hands. How many people have left their job because of a toxic manager or culture or climate or workforce, right? So when we talk about organizational culture, you really have to understand the nuances of that definition. It's the set of values, beliefs, attitudes, systems, and rules that outline and influence employee behavior within that organization. So the culture reflects how employees, customers, vendors, and stakeholders experience that organization and its brand. So why is this important? Because companies with healthy cultures are 1.5 times more likely to experience revenue growth of 15% or more over 3 years. So positive culture equals positive growth. And you can imagine the inverse as well. And by the way, I'd be raising my hand. I've absolutely left multiple organizations because of toxic culture or toxic leadership. Now, when we talk about the employee life cycle, people are often very frustrated about where to start when building a human risk management program. So I like to say that there are a lot of free or cheap things that you can do to start that really shouldn't be a heavy lift. And one of those, kind of the foundation of all of those, is managing the employment life cycle. So starting over at the top left with attract. When you attract your workforce, you want to advertise. I'm like pounding on the desk. You want to advertise that job honestly. If for some reason they can't have, I don't know, cell phones at their desk, you need to say that in the advertisement, because if you hire someone and they're great in the interview and they start their job and they're excited, and then suddenly you're like, oh, no, you can't have that. Go put it in a lockbox. Well, you're going to have a disgruntled employee from day one because you were not honest with what they were getting into. When you're recruiting and you're doing that pre-employment screening and you're doing interviews, one thing I really like to advocate for is have at least one person, if not everyone, assessing that candidate's cultural values, right? We want to make sure that their cultural values, their ethics, their norms, that everything is shared. You want to tell them what's expected of them. And people are probably like, duh, but you would be shocked how many people don't do this. You need to ensure really that employees are a good cultural fit for your company and vice versa, right? That company needs to be a good cultural fit for that person. Another thing is consider personality assessments, especially if someone's in a higher risk position, whatever that means to you. Personality assessments, and there are a lot of them, they can be a fantastic insight into somebody's culture. When you're doing an interview, and I used to be a background investigator for police and fire services in California, people are going to answer how they think you want to hear. So if I'm asking cultural questions, you don't want to ask leading questions. You want to get them to fill in the blanks so that you are getting their truth, not so they're telling you what they think you want to hear. Now, when we get to onboarding, obviously, right, there's job orientation, there's training modules, but this is really your chance to build a security culture. This is a critical phase. I'm pounding on the desk again, right? A clear onboarding process actually improves retention rates by 23%. Now, I worked with a law enforcement organization. I did a human risk assessment for them. And one of the biggest findings for this law enforcement organization was that there was no onboarding. Nothing. It was like scattered, like, here you go, first day, show up. No one's going to walk around. No one's going to tell you anything. And they were hemorrhaging people. They could not keep any of their new employees. And that was reason number one. So you really, really have to just, I think, recognize and embrace that you have that opportunity to shape their cultural buy-in by promoting what's important to you. And I'm foot stomping now, not desk pounding, but that's security, right? Security is important to us, and here's why. And this is where you kind of, I hate to say indoctrinate, but really kind of bring them on board. So you're going to give us security training. And again, you're going to really emphasize company culture. And please, please, company culture should not be, hey, we say it's this. You actually need to live it. Like the C-suite, the board, everyone needs to embrace that culture, and they need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Now, when we look down at development, excuse me, my kids get me sick again. Performance management, right? You're looking at performance management, still training and awareness, pulse surveys. You want to, at this point, you want to monitor for critical pathway or behavioral indicators. You want to be doing all of these checks because this is when people start to become disgruntled, right? As they're working and things are going on. But when you're developing and moving into retaining, you really want to emphasize to those employees by actions, not just words, that we care about you. We're invested in you. There are all kinds of statistics out there about how when you invest in employees, they will stay. They're not going to leave. Your turnover rates are going to just drop. Things like career development, right? If someone works in job X, but they're really kind of interested in job Y, let them take training in job Y. It will benefit you, right? A lot of organizations don't see that. Reward good employees. That will help you retain those good employees. Constantly solicit feedback. And when you're doing a pulse survey or any sort of survey, oftentimes a lot of organizations won't share results, or they'll share bits and pieces of results, and then the employees will never hear again about that survey. You have to be fully transparent. You have to tell them, this is where we scored really poorly, but guess what? Here's what we're going to do to correct that. People need to feel heard, right? Remember, perception is reality. If someone perceives they're not heard or valued, they're out the door. Also, another important point is update your values, your cultural norms, your policies, and your procedures as needed. These should be living documents. I was just interviewing a CEO at an organization last week, and she had said, we were talking about culture, and I asked if she could share her cultural values with me for the company, and she couldn't. She could come up with maybe two, and it was kind of like, I think that's not good. And she's fantastic. But that shows me a lot about their culture, right? And then finally, when we get to offboarding, offboarding is a trigger point. If someone is disgruntled and they walk through their whole life cycle here and they're just kind of snowballing and getting more and more angry, if you don't have a thoughtful offboarding process, that's going to trigger them and you're going to get something like sabotage. All right. So again, why is culture important? I'm not going to really read all of these, but you can see these statistics are just, I mean, culture blows everything out of the water, right? Most people that I know, and I mean, look at the statistic, but think about yourself or people that you know, people are always going to think about culture. Are those people good to work with? What's it like? What's the feeling? What's the vibe? That is very, very important. But if you look at that last bullet also, this is one that I really want to highlight. Companies with a positive culture have up to 72% higher employee engagement rates. Now, again, look at culture, look at things like insider threat or general cybersecurity. If you have employees engaged, you're going to have less risk. You're going to have a lot less incidents and a lot less bad incidents, if you will. All right. I want to share this case study with you. This is a really great example of culture and how important culture is. So this is Joshua Schulte. He was a former CIA software engineer, and he was convicted of leaking classified information to WikiLeaks, everyone's favorite, in 2017. So here's what matters. When he interviewed with CIA, they were probably like, great, interviews well, ticks all the boxes for what we need. But the culture that he was put into was a very small office. And it was kind of like a frat house. It was rowdy. They had Nerf guns at work. They shot each other. They used, bad words. This guy didn't fit into that culture. So everyone thought they were like pulling pranks on each other and it was fun, but this guy couldn't let anything go. In fact, his colleague said that he had a pronounced tendency to overreact. That's a direct quote. And also the way that he took everything too far and too personally, it earned him the office nickname, Nuclear Option. It's not really a good nickname. So Schulte's relationship with his coworkers became so poisonous and so toxic that eventually he just left and he took a job in New York. And everyone thought, oh, it's over, it's done. All right, good riddance. But 4 months later, WikiLeaks published a huge trove of data from Schulte's old office. Now, the New York Times said that this was the largest leak of CIA documents in history. WikiLeaks released thousands of pages detailing sophisticated software tools and techniques used by the agency to break into smartphones, computers, and even internet-connected televisions, which we probably all have nowadays. So remember, I know I keep hammering this, we're on a culture track, but the importance of motivations and vulnerabilities plays into this as well, right? When you think about why someone would do this guy's motivation, in fact, the prosecution's theory that his motivation to leak all these documents was spite. He just wanted to get back at his former colleagues. So culture really matters. Now, this is a very busy slide. I'm very sorry. But there's so much to condense in such a short amount of time. According to LinkedIn, stress is becoming a corporate killer. 77% of US employees have experienced burnout on their jobs. I mean, I have, all of you sitting here probably have to some degree. So according to the report, excessive work, the lack of resources to accomplish the work, we're all familiar with this, right? Limited freedom in decision-making, that's all the cause of burnout. And the number of workers who are stressed is increasing every single year. Gallup, it found that they did like a state of the global workplace survey, and they found that although employees are more engaged, they are also more stressed. Now that's good. We want that engagement. We don't want that stress. So the report found that managers play a significant role in the stress employees experience. Again, I've dealt with that myself. Microstress, if anyone's ever heard of this is fascinating. So microstress is the small moments of everyday stress from interactions you have with your colleagues. For example, more points of interaction that the employee has or the more tools that they use, the more they're exposed to microstress. And this type of stress, it might seem insignificant. It's called micro, right? But if left unchecked, it can become dangerous according to the Harvard Business Review. Also, there's a book, it's called The Burnout Challenge. If anyone's not read it, I highly recommend it. But researchers identified in this book that there are 6 areas where mismatch between the employee or their job position are the primary causes of chronic stress in the workplace. So according to the researchers, the 6 mismatches are lack of control, work overload, inequity at work, not enough benefits, breakdown of community, and value conflicts. Also, so when it comes to gender, women are more prone to burnout compared to men. Men are, well, that's 37%. Also, working moms are more likely to suffer burnout than working dads. I'm a single mom of 3 young kids. I'm freaking exhausted, right? But there's no single reason why burnout is more likely to occur in women. Experts say that the factors that contribute to burnout really do vary, okay? Different research shows that women face unique challenges, discrimination, gender-based expectations, likelihood of juggling multiple roles at work and home. I think the study was like working parents, it's like 98 hours a week just managing the kids. That's like 2 full-time jobs and then some. All right, stress. We're going to continue on stress because it's all part of culture. So along with other mental health issues, stress is one of the primary reasons for high absenteeism rates. SHRM, if anyone's familiar with SHRM, they did another report and they found that stress or mental related leaves, like leaves of absence, are up to 33% in 2023. Of these leaves of absence, 69% are taken by women. So you can see how it's disproportionate. And some of the negative impacts that the workers feel just in general include emotional exhaustion, feeling unmotivated, low productivity, and a desire to quit. Furthermore, up to 40% of workers say that they're not getting the breaks or time off that they need. And that's from the American Psychological Association. Now, everyone who knows me knows I'm going to tie this to insider threat. If you have this in your organization at these levels, you have massive human risk. Everyone like my little 50s lady doing research? Okay. So when we're talking about culture and assessing culture, a lot of people like their eyes roll in the back of their head. And they're like, I don't even know where to start. What do we do? You can do both quantitative and qualitative assessments. So first with quantitative, you can do security metrics and KPIs. So you can track the number of security incidents, near misses, reported vulnerabilities. You can track those over time. You can measure the participation rates in security training programs and the completion rates of mandatory cybersecurity courses. With phishing simulations, I will add a lot of people are absolutely burnt out of phishing simulations. I would encourage you to think outside the box, do something different, right? Maybe have a competition where people create the best phishing simulation and they win a prize or something. But when we're talking about phishing simulations, you can conduct those, you can test to measure employee susceptibility to phishing attacks. You can analyze click rates and reporting rates of simulated phishing emails. And then with compliance audits, you can perform regular audits to ensure compliance with security policies and regulations. You can quantify the adherence to security protocols and identify areas for improvement. When we're talking qualitative, I'm going back to surveys, right? Surveys and interviews. By conducting employee surveys, you're gauging awareness, attitudes, perceptions. Perceptions is very important regarding those cybersecurity practices or the culture around it. You can perform one-on-one interviews or focus groups to gain deeper insights into that security culture and identify specific concerns or misunderstandings. And misunderstandings are more common than you think. Behavioral observation. So here you observe day-to-day behaviors and practices within the organization to identify any deviations from established security protocols. You can monitor informal communication channel and social interactions to understand the implicit security culture, right? You can also be tipped off to a lot of insider threat that way. And then feedback mechanisms. Encourage open feedback from employees about security policies and practices. Make them feel like they're part of the solution. Make them feel like they are being heard. You can implement, sorry, I'm like talking so fast, I'm eating my words. You can implement anonymous reporting channels for employees to report security concerns, also without fear of reprisal. Remember that story in the beginning. I did not want to report my friend because I was terrified I was going to be retaliated against, and I was. But some employees have to do the right thing. But people also have to get over that culture of feeling like they're a narc or a tattletale or they're ratting out their friend. All right, how am I on time? All right, I'm going to leave.
We're on time here. You got about 7 minutes.
Okay, good. So closing slide, I just want to let you know that there are a lot of different things you can do to mitigate human risk. I would absolutely recommend that you start with a human risk assessment or an insider threat vulnerability assessment. This tells you what you're doing well. It tells you the ground truth. You could have all the policies and procedures and tools. That's great. But do people know about them? Do they follow them, right? Do they talk about them? Also, it'll give you a roadmap for what you need to do to improve it and to build out that human risk management program. Also, create an enterprise-wide training and awareness program. Please, I beg you, please, the ROI is there. The statistics are there. If you're building a house, the foundation is training and awareness. If your employees understand what they're doing to leave you vulnerable, the mistakes they're making, they're going to leave you less vulnerable. And they will also be eyes and ears for you to report potential malicious actors that you obviously can't, you can't train that away. Next is, like I talked about, manage that employee lifecycle. Remember, this is free or cheap. This is a very little lift compared to all of these other things. There are so many touch points throughout someone's career that you can mitigate risk if you do it thoughtfully and do it right. Develop a robust human risk management program. I will say it until the day I die. You have to have it. Do you employ humans? All of you do. Then you have human risk, period, full stop. And then lastly, gold standard, implement technical mitigation steps. There are a lot of really cool tools out there. We're even getting into really cool AI detection tools where they can detect changes in pattern of behavior before someone's done the bad thing. So you're not waiting for that, DLP or UEBA to say, they stole IP. No. This is as they are about to, it will predict and you can intervene early. So there's a lot you can do. That is the fastest I've ever given a presentation. I appreciate everyone's time and we will open it up for questions.
And we appreciate you, Shawnee, taking all your knowledge and condensing it down into a short little 25-minute window. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat just yet, but I saw a note from Sue here about an opt-in phishing derby. And I love the fact that it's opt-in. Shawnee, where does that sit with you?
That is great. So, okay, think about kids, right? kids want to feel like they have a choice. You give them peas for dinner, they're like, I don't like peas. But if you're like, I always tell my kids, okay, well, you can have 10 peas or 12 peas. How many peas do you want? Usually it's more. And they're like, well, I only want 10. Of course, they're going to say 10, but they feel like they have a choice and they feel like they're participating. That, what Sue said, is perfect because employees are going to feel like they have a choice, right? You're getting that engagement. I love that.
And I just put it in the chat. I didn't know if I could type faster or ask faster, but Sue, is there any incentive for people to join? Like, are they getting swag or is it really just the pride of being able to take part? And I don't know if you
Yeah,
can come off mute or if you can just chat back in, Sue.
I would love to hear, Sue, if you're comfortable unmuting, because that really is a fabulous idea. And I know like people always argue with the incentivization. Do people really care about swag? Do people really care about badges on their name, on the thing? Like it's nothing really to them, but people are extremely motivated. Look at Duolingo. If anyone is bored, read about Duolingo at night and how it has just blown everything apart because it's using badges and streaks. So implementing things like streaks, actually, I just emailed Ashley Rose about this a few days ago because the streak thing is psychologically, people love the streak. So if you're like, okay, you've identified 5 phishing emails, you're on a streak. People are like, I want to continue the streak. That's how Peloton works so well too. So
Duolingo got me the other night. They said you're gonna lose your streak. It was like 10:30 at night. All I needed to do was 3 minutes of a time. I said, you know what? I can do this.
yes,
So
yes.
effective. Good question that just came in from Andra. I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. But are there any tools or do you have any recommendations through your services of who can help with a human risk assessment? And I'll shamelessly plug that there will be a reach out from Living Security that we can assist with a human risk assessment.
Yeah, I do it too. And
Yeah.
just so everyone knows, full disclosure, I've partnered, Vaillance Group is partnered with Living Security. Um, but they are just such a really unique insight because with the interviews, remember every interview is confidential and it could be dozens of people. You are finding out culture. Like I ask culture questions, I ask morale questions, I get in the weeds. So it's not just policies and procedures and boring stuff. It is actually what are people thinking and what are the roadblocks and hurdles? What would make their life easier in your organization? And so they're really eye-opening.
So we got a response from Sue. Thanks for getting back to us on this one. I like the wow, 3 to 4 exercises in time. That is a very intense one, and those are some serious prizes. But Shawnee, the question that I also love asking people who speak, do you have any resources that you really love following within the industry or people on LinkedIn that you really, get some insight from? Any recommendations?
God, I follow anyone I can. I am an avid learner. I literally like, I don't know why, but to relax at night when I go to bed, I am reading about insider threat. And if anyone sees my posts, I will find a news article and tie it to insider. I can tie anything to human risk. Absolutely. Um, so yeah, I think it is just important to read everything you can because when you're talking about human risk, it touches on law enforcement, intelligence, psychology. And I'm going to interrupt my own self. Look at industrial organizational psychology. I'm actually getting a third master's in it. People don't realize IO psychology, it's like the psychology of cultures and workplaces. It is literally human risk management. So it is a really, really a fascinating topic. And there are a ton of articles and journal stuff out there that you can read about it.